redneck town in North Carolina, but compared to where I wound up, it was Disneyland. And I just sort of wandered around. Didn't have any real purpose or objective or goals or anything like that. Yeah, I was just a guy that was just scrambling hard and going downhill quick. And I wound up, for some reason, up in Flint, Michigan, for God's sakes. Now, that is about as bad as it gets. I know there was at least one guy in this crowd that was brave enough to tell me he was from Michigan, but he's not from Flint. He wasn't that bad. He's from another town. And I wound up in Flint. I didn't mean to. I didn't even know it was there. But I just wound up there. I got it. I was going to Flint, and here we went. And I did remarkably well. I was a real key operator at General Motors for a while, about a week. I worked at everything, had General Motors on the side, and then got blackballed in the industry. I couldn't get a job washing a truck, much less making one. And then it just sort of ran the course. And started gravitating even further down, just going to day labor and then pick up work. And I'll tell you, the hardest job I've ever had is unemployed. Even drunk, unemployed, never. I mean, you feel like you're in a different world, for God's sake. You don't even feel right. Drunk, you don't feel right. But that's what I was a lot. And so I did pick up stuff. And then I did pick up stuff. That's a whole different story. I wound up in Flint. One reason I was so fond of Flint, at one time it was voted the worst city in the United States in which to live. Is that right, Edgy? It's right. And and it deserved the title, too. And when Flint was named the worst city, I kind of swelled up with a little bit of pride. Yeah, go for that's fantastic. I think it just made the list again. They'll be undisputed champion before they pure sucked. And unemployed, and I lived in the worst section of the worst city in the United States. Now you talk about an illusion and delusion. When I lived there, that seemed normal. My life seemed normal, and I'm living like an absolute barbarian. And I said, I wasn't a criminal. I did a lot of stuff that people would have classified as crime, but it really wasn't crime. It was just the reciprocal trade agreement that existed between people who lived where I lived. And nobody ever reported a crime. My God, if you call the police, they'd lock you up as quick as you would the other one. So it was just, one day I'm the friskiest, the next day the other guy is, and that's just the way food chain works. And so that's where I wound up in Flint. And went on at it, and I'm absolutely confident that I used to rather morbidly predict that I wouldn't make it past 29. I don't know why I picked 29, but I picked 29 as a place where I'd take it up. It just was as good a forecast as any. And I'm pretty sure that it would have been true had I not been brought to a stop. Now, I've got many, many friends in this room, many, many friends here. And many people here that could just pick up where I am and just keep on finishing the story. It wouldn't be any problem whatsoever. Wouldn't miss a beat. So if I fall out, don't worry about it. Just drag me off. Run into somebody else, they'll knock it out. And so that's where I went. And I was brought to a stop in a very tragic way, and one that I certainly understand that everybody in this group can identify with, whether you're alcoholic or not. You can identify with the tragedy that so often ensues with alcoholism. It was just part of the deal. Thank God for most alcoholics. Most alcoholics don't do great harm that can't be repaired. Most don't. Most alcoholics are pretty decent people. We hide it well. But deep down, really pretty decent folk. Underneath. And so I was no different. I knew I was the kind of guy, because I really was wild and crazy and reckless, and I knew I was capable of anything. But I never believed I would ever do anything unrepairable. I never really thought in those terms. I knew I was capable, but never believed I would. Who would? And one morning I came to a jail in Flint, no novelty, normal business. And I got to a point where I woke in so many bizarre places that when I would wake up somewhere like jail, I felt a sense of relief because I knew I was in the right place. Sometimes you wake up, well, anyway, that's it. I get into two examples. God knows we'd be here past the desk, so I'm just going to forego it. And so one morning I came to it in jail, and I assumed I was in there for the same as always, either drunk or hustling or scuffling on the street or rolling somebody, whatever. I always thought it'd just be business as usual. And after I was awake for a little while, I knew the routine. The jailer always came by at about 10, and he would be catching the guys that wanted to try to make bond or try to get out on a promise or whatever. And so he came by, and I was up at the bar, and I said, "Hey, guys, when can I get out?" I knew him. And he said, he just looked at me. He said, "I hope never," and walked off. Had no clue what he was talking about, not a clue. But I knew he was serious. He was not playing. And so he walked on, and I went back into the tank, and some of the guys in there apparently had heard some news or something or read a paper. And they told me, the inmates told me, that the night before some guy had been driving a car blind drunk down the main street of the city and had run down and killed 2 people. And that I had been arrested for the crime. I had absolutely no clue. But I knew they were serious, and just the thought of it was more than I could handle. I could believe it, but I couldn't accept it. If you know what I'm talking about, that the mind it defends itself. Your mind will not take in what it can't handle, and that explains a lot of behavior to me. A lot of behavior. And so when that was visited to me from those guys, I just said no to myself. I didn't say anything to them, but to myself, said no, that couldn't be. And they gradually accepted the truth, that what I believed to be the truth, that I'd done more damage than any drunk ever ought to be allowed to do. And it was I can remember the feeling of just absolute grief and shame I didn't know what to do. All I wanted to do was disappear, just be gone, and didn't notify anybody that I was in there. There was no novelty there. My family never knew where I was. When they called me in Flint, they called a bar on Saginaw Street because that was the most likely place they would find it. They'd leave a message because they knew I'd be there sooner or later. And so they were not alarmed if they didn't hear from me for months. It was just normal business. And so I just sat there, and for, I don't know why, but for some reason there was a policeman there that I'll never know, but I'm not going to try to find out. I think he just did something honest. But this fellow learned that I had family down in North Carolina, called my folks, and my mother and sister were at home. He got him on the phone and told him, "You got a guy up here in a lot of trouble. If you want to try to do anything with him, you better come on," because he was talking himself into more. And so my family did, what so many alcoholic families do. That anyway. Well, I posted to make it back here or not, but I was listening to those numbers tonight about who's here. It's kind of troubling numbers in a way. You've got a wonderful contingent of alcoholics, and then you get the family, it dramatically decreases. When you get to the children of alcoholics, it almost disappears. A troubling kind of thing to me, because I'm somebody who believes that alcoholism is a family illness. I believe that. Therefore, Alcoholics Anonymous, recovery is a family matter. And the family either recovers together, or so often, my God, we have a higher divorce rate sober than we do drunk. And so there's something troubling about that whole thing. Anyway, that's borders on editorial comment, but it just struck me that I put it out because I think we all ought to think about that kind of thing. Because, well, I'm about to really get off and editorialize it, but it's not really editorialized. It's expressing concern is what that is. And so it is a bit troubling. My family did what families do. They made a trip they couldn't afford to see a guy that didn't even want to be seen, to try to help get out of a situation that I didn't want out of. I just wanted to be gone. Got a lawyer that they couldn't afford to try to defend a guy who had no defense. That's what families do. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just a part of being part of the illness, eh? That's part of the illness. And so they did, and they got an attorney. I didn't want to get out of jail, but I don't know how to tell somebody that I don't want to get out. And so they negotiated my release. I was charged with manslaughter, and on the 17th of July, in '56, I was released on bond to await trial. And I knew I would not drink. It had nothing to do with alcoholism, even though everybody that had ever captured me made the same diagnosis. Same one. Only diagnosis I ever had, other than ugly, is alcoholic, drunk, problem record, whatever. I'd heard it over and over and over. And that didn't mean anything to me. I really believed deep down that I was a world beater if I could just hold my feet. If I could just stand up long enough, man, I'd tear it up. And so they released me on the 17th of July. Knew I wouldn't drink, but I didn't know what to do. Couldn't stand to be around anybody. Couldn't stand to look at anybody. I was ashamed to be breathing. And I just wandered the streets all day, all night, till about noon the next day. And then on the 18th of July, I started to drink literally like no person I've ever seen. Now, that's not an idle statement. That's not some casual kind of cloakroom chatter. That's a literal fact. I have worked with thousands of alcoholics, thousands. I held an alcoholic in my arms while he died, and even as he died, he was protesting the fact that he wasn't as bad as us. And I just gave in. I just gave in. Some people say alcoholism is a slow form of suicide. In my case, it wasn't a slow form. It was slower than a gun, but I think in my twisted logic, the best I could tell, I was just trying to protect the family. Had I just shot myself or some overtly suicidal, that they would have always been burdened with whether they could have done anything to prevent it. And I think that strange logic was if I was just found hit by a truck or OD or whatever, that there'd at least be a question. And so on the 17th I went out, and on the 18th I started to drink. But from the 18th of July to the 19th of November was actually the date of my last drink. That's not my sobriety date, that's the last drink I took. But that had little to do with recovery. That just had to do that was the last drink. Recovery started a few months later, on February 2nd. And so when that day came, the 19th of November, I finished a bottle of gin, just had a few inches in it. Finished and went down to court, knew it was a one-way trip, knew I wouldn't be back. And had no illusions whatsoever, had no defense. I didn't, if I had any defense, I wouldn't have given it, I don't think. And my attorney did the best he knew how to do. He told me to enter a plea of stand mute. I've never heard of the sentence of that plea. I never heard of it. But what an absolutely perfect plea for a guy in a blackout. What else can you say? I don't know. They put me on the stand, and as much as I would have loved to have said something, the only thing I could say is, I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know. That's the hell of blackouts. And they could have told me I hadn't done anything, and I would have had no defense, neither would you, if you had them. Nobody would. And so that's exactly what it was. And I listened to the trial just like the jury did. It was obvious I was guilty, and when they were finished and made the finding, and the judge called me up, told me I was guilty of involuntary manslaughter, and was given a maximum sentence of 15 years in Michigan State Penitentiary. And I knew that something was coming. That I tell you, it's sort of idle conjecture in a way, but I've often thought that if that